Okay, we are live.
Okay, so I'm facilitating, so I'll go ahead and start with what I got. So she wanted us to brainstorm, sorry, the different ways, my goodness, sorry, that we believe organizations can prepare leaders at all levels to respond in a crisis. So the training that I put that a company should offer to improve the employee's ability to excel in crisis leadership would be like safety briefs or like annual training that's continuous throughout throughout their employment there, not just like in the very beginning. So I don't know if you guys want to like break it up into sections so that we can just go around and like discuss it and then we'll go back to the next one. But does that sound fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, yeah. So that was my options was just basically safety briefs, and yeah, like I said, like the annual training. So yeah, I'd like to hear what you guys put for that.
Yes.
I'll go.
Okay.
You know, they have the creating a crisis management plan. I think that's a really good step into the first part of it, just being able to, you know, come up with something and sharing it with, you know, all the employees so that people know that there's a certain process to go through and everything. It might make people feel safer if it, you know, like you create something that's not as, like something that's more secure or private where people can kind of report crisis and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's important that when people feel safe to like actually say something.
Definitely. Well, because we had to do, you know, our writings this week, our discussion post on that Sandusky thing, and it was like frustrating for me to even read that so many people knew what were happening and it was a crisis and nobody really, they were afraid to say something.
You know, it took like 14 years.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I thought it was crazy. It took like 14 years for them to figure out like what was going on.
I know, and if they would have had like a good crisis plan in place, they could have saved a lot of kids from that type of abuse.
I don't think that they did not know that it was happening. I think they just put a blind eye to it because the university was getting so much money and so many sponsorships because of the Penn State University football team that they just said, prove it or, yeah.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
I haven't even read this, but I remember this happening.
It's very frustrating. Very. It's just like, how could you two successful individuals in a position to help so many, and then they do something like this that is so tragic? It's just awful.
I know. And then you know, you look at the people they asked, like the janitor on, you know, like, why didn't he report? And he was like, well, it's because I, you know, viewed Sandusky as like a type of like, you know, president or somebody of like authority. And I think it's because they didn't have a good crisis plan management, you know, thing in place. They didn't have steps to take. They didn't know that they could do something, you know, they didn't feel safe in saying anything because they thought that it would affect them. And so it definitely shows the importance of needing that to be done.
Yeah. Do you all think that like people of power or in power positions play a role into where people won't speak up on things that when people are doing, you know, doing wrong or wrongdoings? Do you think
I
because
definitely
maybe
think so.
I think so too.
I think people are either scared or like they know that, like, say someone does something and they don't, you know, they don't like it, it shouldn't be done. Like maybe they won't tell the manager because the manager favors them, or you know, they're friends even. Especially like where I'm in the restaurant business, so it's like a lot of managers are like friends with your employees, and like if a crisis was to happen, like I felt like my manager was friends with the person, I might not feel comfortable saying something.
My company too, like there's a lot of nepotism, and so it's just clear, you know, it's not, you know, going to be effective to say anything if you have a lot to lose. So you know, there's a lot of fear there.
Definitely. Do you guys have any thoughts on like what would be a way to make that better so that you don't feel
I
And
think
Tamia,
that
do you
the
think like training
cultivation of
programs or?
I think like having meetings before and after, like organizations should hold meetings, like even if they're very quick, just like ask everybody how they are and like really listen to what people are saying and make everybody like actually speak up. Like don't have your person standing in the back that like has a problem. Like actually make everyone like speak up and like as a manager talk to your employees. I think like really talking to your employees could prevent crises like that and like people from staying quiet. That's all in like your management and your leader. Like, do you really have like a leader person in position, or do you just have someone of power?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a very, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think they should just cultivate, like, really just have a strong open door policy, and to where that the individual that comes to tell won't seek any type of penalty,
Mhm.
for speaking up. And oftentimes, a lot of things are ignored, just like with the situation, just hypothetically speaking, fear of losing their job or losing incentives because of speaking up against
Mhm.
something that is wrong. And so I think that if the open door policy has policies in place to protect the individuals that are speaking up, that would help aid to, a lot of issues being resolved. It'll take that fear away.
I agree.
Yeah.
Definitely.
In the past, I think like anonymous kind of outlets have been the best um, for like grievances or whatever that I can think of. And so I think face to face or an open door policy is good, but sometimes it's just not enough. And so
Mm.
the anonymous outlet has always been, something that not myself, but like coworkers have really appreciated or
Right. Well, I know a lot of people
utilized.
like, they don't like to be called like a snitch. No one likes
Mhm.
that term like on them. So if
Mhm.
I do know that like people wouldn't say something just because they don't want to be the person to have to.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
I feel like that might be like a big thing with the Penn State thing is like maybe people who knew about it were just like someone's gonna say something, like someone has to say something, and then no
Yeah,
one
like
did.
that bystander effect. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that happened.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, see, they looked up to him so much to where, oh, we don't believe that he would do something like that. And are you just saying that they didn't believe that he was actually that type of person until people started speaking up?
Yeah.
That was so sad.
There's
When
a
I was, oh, go ahead.
there's a case study that was just like it was just like a people put a little girl out on the road and she walked around and like with a man that was like kind of following her that was her dad, but she was walking around like saying it wasn't her dad, and he was like chasing her around, and like the amount of people that didn't even like turn their head to be like honey, like is this really not your dad or anything, like it was like 70% of people literally just walked by, and this girl was like crying, wailing, like saying get off me to some man, and nobody even like stopped to make sure that they were okay. Like they were just like the bystander effect was terrible.
Wow.
I could not. Oh my gosh, I'm such a mama bear. If I see like a kid, I'm like,
I'm
get
definitely at
away.
least like stop and like watch for a couple minutes and like see what's really going on. Like I'm not just gonna walk by and like go on about my day.
I know. But like you said, most people, and that's like when I was doing our project for our noted bibliography, I had to do, we have to look at some of these cases and stuff like that. And a couple of them that I had on there, a big thing that it said to help prevent crisis or to help build like a team and stuff is management training. And like you guys mentioned, managers, sometimes they favor certain people or they do things that probably aren't, correct in a management role. And I think trainings would be a huge way to help prevent that, to train people to say, like, this is your position and how you can handle certain situations and, how to treat certain employees and things like that. So I think training definitely seemed to be a positive thing in all the studies that I read this weekend
Mhm.
or this week.
Something I've taken like a few public affairs classes actually, and something they mention like in the text is like talk about like your liability exposure. That the more you know, the less people can't say, "Well, I didn't know," or like the more you communicate, the less ambiguity there is. All types of things that come along with training and development and those kind of programs and open door, all that kind of stuff. it just lessens the liability. And so I definitely think like training and things like that are necessary for, I mean, any company really, but definitely when you're in a
I
crisis.
honestly don't think I've ever went through like actual training for any of my jobs for a crisis. Like, not like I think one restaurant I worked at like actually had a sheet that they sent us home with that was like, in case of a fire, do this. In case of this, do this. But like, no other restaurant I've ever worked at has even laid out ground rules like that whatsoever.
I was thinking
Maybe
that
Not even
too.
like the sexual assault thing or anything, like stuff like that.
No, actually, not even that. I have like I just started my job yesterday, and like nothing about that has been mentioned.
Oh wow.
Like for me, I don't personally care because like I'm a strong-willed person, so I'm not one of those people who wouldn't say something. But for someone to come in and work at the restaurant business, I think that's huge because like sexual harassment is huge in these
Oh
types
yeah,
of
definitely. Yeah.
Definitely.
organizations. Yeah, they really should. They should have some sort of training. And like you said, not just when you start, they should have it once a year, once every 6 months for everyone.
Absolutely. It's poor crisis management on their part.
Well, like with the questions with the regards to the discussion, like some successful ways, have you all experienced any successful crisis interventions within, your place of employment?
I mean, I'm sure I have. I'm trying to think of like I've had like times when my soda machine literally stops working behind the bar, and I'm like, how am I supposed to make mixed drinks behind the bar when I don't have a soda machine? And like my manager would just be like, okay, just like pour their alcohol, and then they'll go get their mixed drinks because their soda machine was working. And that was just like delegating positions and just our manager stepping up and saying, okay, you don't have this, so like you do this, you do this. That was like a very small crisis, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they should
Yeah.
definitely have like a plan in place and trainings for people, like so that way people know, even with it small or big, whatever it is, they should have something in place to help keep things running smoothly for their company.
Mhm. Yeah. What would be considered like a crisis? Because if you think of crisis, like when I think of crisis, like something negative, like Penn State or something that's affecting the organization to where it's not generating a cash flow, or like what would be considered like a crisis in this sense to where you have a crisis manual or you have crisis, meetings.
Well, in the book, it mentioned like there's different crises. Like there's like natural disasters, and then there's like the like lawsuits and stuff like that, or small things like like student protests and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I do
it
see
doesn't
that
matter
here.
really
Hear
what
that word crisis is like I think of it more as like more serious stuff, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely like before reading this chapter, I was like, oh, a crisis is just like kind of like what you said, Kristen, like some big event that's gonna, greatly affect everything. And then you realize there's a lot of different parts to it and it has a lot of different levels. And it's definitely interesting to learn that and to be able to know. And even in like family life, in work life and all of it, there's a good, even with like your, family coming up with like a crisis plan if something happens, like with your son. And having asthma attacks, like the school had a plan. That's like a crisis, I would think,
Yeah.
Well, I definitely think that a crisis can just be anything. It can be small or big because, like where it says in the book, for page 411, it says economic. Like even cash shortages, are under economic crisis types, and I just think like anything that threatens your like the way you thrive in any kind of situation can be a crisis considerably. I mean, and that's really like when they talk about the liability, the decrease of liability with training or with like all the things that we've said, big or little, those things can be eliminated, or at least you have a game plan in place. And I don't necessarily think it needs to be like huge or earth shattering. But like crisis for me would be because we manage a self storage facility, and a crisis for us would be just simply somebody breaking into a unit because that becomes somebody else's whole world. So I think it's like a domino effect. So nothing is too small, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
Now, what about some unsuccessful examples? We've already talked about the successful examples of crisis leadership. So then what about some unsuccessful, if you guys have any to share?
I definitely think of politics when I think of unsuccessful
Yeah, that's
crisis.
my favorite too. Politicians, yeah. Yeah, politicians.
Mhm.
I mean, just obviously, like the natural disasters are unsuccessful crisis. Like, I mean, when they happen, but we obviously have crisis management in place for when those things do happen. Like the past hurricane, was it Hurricane Matthew? The last one that was in South Florida, I think. I lived in Florida at the time, and they were like, it was like a Schedule 4. They evacuated West Palm, so I had to like end up going more south and like going down to my grandparents in Miami, and then literally it rained. Like that's all that happened. It rained, but they had the crisis management in place, and everyone was out of West Palm in case it was bad. So that was an example of successful crisis management, I guess. Even though it was unnecessary. It prepared us for any contingency that hurricane was going to be.
I would have preferred that to happen than be like stuck like Katrina, where people
of
just,
course, yeah.
oh, we're not, no.
I came back to my house, so totally intact. So
Yeah.
I know, but even like looking at Hurricane Katrina, like all the people that had to evacuate, even though they did have a plan in place, I feel like they had some things that they probably learned from it and took away from it, because a lot of people were left without homes and with nowhere to go and nothing.
for someone to up and leave their home, like for me, it wasn't because it was one night, but those people up and left their homes, like that itself is a crisis. Like they left their home with how much time, and then they were just away from their home. And even people who went back to a home, still for that like period of time, were in a pretty big crisis that they had to deal with.
Yeah, I definitely think that you learn from everything, good or bad. And so
Yeah.
it's always a precept. Yep, it's always a precept to some lesson or the future or whatever.
So I guess the most unsuccessful part to crisis management that I think that we're all really kind of coming up with is like poor communication and poor preparation.
Preparation, yeah. Preparation is very important for any type of, even for successful and unsuccessful events, because if there's not a plan in place, you don't know which direction to take.
Right.
You know, you just feel like, oh my God, what do I do? And then you already thinking about so many things.
And you could be successful, I guess, like it's possible, but it'd be so much better, obviously, if everyone knows, and especially in an organization setting, if you have 20 employees, something happens, you want all 20 employees to be able to do the same thing and know exactly what to do.
Yeah.
You know, I think what would be like a good successful crisis planning would be like fire drills. If you noticed, a lot of people like will practice for them before they happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's good, because then everybody knows what to expect, as opposed to all of a sudden a fire's there and people are like, where do I go? Where's that map? I don't know what I'm doing.
It's funny, I don't think I've had a fire drill since I was in like 10th grade. Like no jobs I've ever worked for. And I work in a restaurant, like there's a kitchen. There could easily be a fire started.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy that they don't.
No, it's just like, hey, I hope you don't die if something happens, because we're not trained at all.
See, okay, so the only reason I thought of that is because I worked in a big, tall, like glass building about like 2 years ago, and every, like 6 months we'd do a fire drill. And so like everybody in the building had to go down, and we all had like our little sections and checklists and everything. And we had like fire monitors, and like they had to wear orange shirts, and they would count for everybody. So
that's good. I'm happy to hear that. At least some organizations are doing that.
I think that's hard though. Like if a restaurant were to have a fire drill, like everyone's eating and they're like, stop, put your food down. Like we're having a fire drill. So we can.
The guests, but they could at least tell us what we should do. Like if it were to happen, like honestly, at this point, if there was a fire at my restaurant, I'd be getting out of the building. Like I wouldn't be doing anything else other than saving myself. Like
And I guarantee you there's a plan written somewhere in a binder where the manager hasn't disclosed it to his employees on what to do in case of emergency.
Yeah.
That's
true.
I
think like crisis management has this kind of like system. Like if a leader is failing to report all this stuff to like a manager, and then the manager doesn't report it to its employees, like then nobody knows, and I guess that's where that poor management of crisis would start, is that they just don't show people. Like you said, things get stuck in a binder and no one sees them.
Mm-hmm.
There's
They
no
don't see it as a priority because it's not happening now.
Yeah.
exactly, like
Or
there's no crisis, there's no preparation, there's just the crisis, and then you like something's happened and you have to figure it out right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of people that say, oh, that's just a what if situation, and they don't, take it seriously, or that's just not their personality or the way that they think. And so, on like a corporation level, there might be a what if, or, this is what you do. But as it trickles down, some people, I know myself, I'm like always a what if and a planner. And my husband's like, just worry about it when it happens. So like, I definitely can see how like some people's tendencies or personalities could definitely just hinder that process trickling down and being implemented and shared. And, I think there are a lot of people who think, oh, that's never going to happen. So
Yeah.
it can get lost in
I think
translation.
something happening to those people for them to be like, okay, well, I'm
Yeah.
making a plan for next time.
Yeah.
Definitely. And that's where I think like we all agreed that training is so important for managers, because if you can train them saying, hey, even if you have that, personality where you think, oh, we'll just deal with it when it happens. Well, this is what the effects are. And we're going to train you on that. So you want to show people, how to handle situations.
Mm-hmm.
My other class is organizational leadership, and we have to make a project plan. And my first project plan literally got like the worst grade ever. And my teacher was like, you need to add contingencies to your plan. And I'm like, how am I supposed to add contingencies if I don't know the contingencies? Like, isn't that the definition of the word? And like, I had a conversation with her on the phone. We had like a phone conference, and she was like, she explained to me how to put them in there. And she was like, I know it sounds crazy, but you literally have to think about it happening. You have to think about getting sick. You have to think about electronic stuff happening, and like, it was funny because all those things have happened to me this semester. Like my charger not working last week really did happen. And it was like, after the couple of those things happened to me, I was like, wow, I can easily write some things into my plan now. So I think that was like planning like that. Adria, I know you said that you're always planning in your head. Like you really are like pre-crisis all the time in your head. And that helps.
Which
you.
isn't always good either.
No, it's not. It's like a very anxious way to live. I'm also like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I wish I could sometimes like fly by the seat of my pants, but I am like worst case scenario, I just don't want to be caught with my pants down. Like I just have that fear. So I'm always in that mode. And, usually men are different than women, but especially with that, like my husband and I are total opposites. And I've learned from him to be a little less neurotic, I guess. Yeah.
It's funny you use that word, because my boyfriend tells me like almost every day I'm neurotic. He'll like sing the song. He's like, you're neurotic to the bone. I'm like, all right, calm down.
Except for when they gain something from your neuroses.
Right.
Then they're grateful that you're like, see?
Yeah. There has to be balance, I guess, right?
Right. That's so true. Yeah.
So I think we covered everything.
Yeah.
If you want to stop. Yeah, if anyone wants to add anything, but I think we're done.
We need to talk about facilitating next week, and then I know we're going to meet Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, Kristen, are you the only one that hasn't facilitated yet?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, would you
So
be
I
up
will
for
facilitate.
Yes.
Yes.
I was hinting, but not trying to be obvious.
Oh, man, you guys do such an amazing job, I guess. Yes, I'll take my turn. I avoided it as long as I could, so.
Okay, I'm going to stop it.